All mammals and dogs have this. So we might just think it's just us, but our dogs have this as well. So that's important to help us understand not only our own behavior, but also our dog's behavior and why we get triggered or why they get triggered. And it seems like they literally can't hear us.
Hi, I'm Kathy Kowalik, and I believe that our dogs connect us to the heart and soul of what really matters in life. So hang out, and we'll take a deep dive into the human-dog connection and explore strategies that will inspire you to create legendary, enlightened partnership with your dog. This is the Enlightened by Dogs podcast.
Well, hello, Kathy Kowalik here, and I am here with one of my favorite people on the earth, and I think you're going to love this interview we have planned for you. I'm here with Marika, and she's got quite an interesting story. She started out as a school teacher, and as many of us did, she went on to have struggles with a difficult for her dog, and that led to a career change into a positive dog trainer so she could help other dog families with their challenging dogs, and that has continued to evolve. And Marika is one of my certified partnership coaches, and she helps us in our communities and helps dog moms and in my communities. And then she also serves her own clients and students in her program. So Marika, welcome. I'm so delighted to have you here today. This is going to be so juicy.
Hi, Kathy. I'm so glad to be here, and I'm excited too to share some new knowledge with everybody. Well, may not be new for everyone, but I'm sure for a lot of people.
Yeah, well, I mean, sometimes it might not be like new, but sometimes it's like new as in like, oh, wow, I actually can implement this in my life and do something with it. So sometimes it's new in that way. So I think, for me, I was thinking about this, and I like how this discussion that we're going to have is all about better understanding how stress influences our experiences and our success, I guess we could say, as a dog mom, and how that in turn affects our dogs and their behavior. And I love that you are going to give us some simple techniques that we could use to promote releasing that stress that kind of catches us up in that loop. And I know that you've got, you're sharing your personal experiences of learning and using these concepts and techniques and how it helped you. And now you are sharing it with us and the world. So I'm excited to dive into this.
Yeah, me too. This is something, this has been a journey for me learning about all of this. And I'm guessing there are a lot of people that, they don't know why they get stressed. They don't know even though maybe their lives aren't that stressful, but they're still experiencing stress. This is what I'm seeing in a lot of my own clients and in your community too, Kathy. So that's why I thought this was really important to bring this up and talk about this today.
Yeah. So you want to kick us off by telling us about this idea that stress and experiences that we've had in life, it gets trapped in our body. Can you kick us off? What does that mean? What is that?
Yeah. So basically, when we're triggered by something, and this is something not everyone knows, is the feeling actually starts in our body. So our brain then tries to make sense of it logically and comes up with thoughts that we think about what might have triggered us, or just our brain has to make sense of the feeling in our body. So it triggers thoughts in our brain, and then we react to these thoughts. Now, a lot of people probably think, or they just skip over the body part altogether and just think it starts with the thoughts in your head and then that's what's triggering you. But they have to come from somewhere, and they're actually just your brain trying to make logical sense of what's going on.
Yeah, I hear you. And so we get stuck kind of in this loop, and part of understanding what's happening in our body, we can look at it through the perspective of like the vagus nerve and how that influences our behavior. Because this is something that like we talk about in Brilliant Partners Academy. Like we put a lot of focus on understanding more about ourselves so that we can make better informed decisions. So tell us about the vagus nerve and what does that mean? How is it connected to behavior? Dive into that a little bit for us.
Exactly. So I'm going to tell you a bit about the vagus nerve in a second, but just to give you a summary of this idea that we're talking about to help everyone get a big picture view is, and why it's important and why we're going to talk about the vagus nerve is that if we only deal with the thoughts that we're having and not the feeling in our body, it just keeps getting stored as trapped energy in the body and will keep reappearing each time we're triggered. So that's why we're stuck in a loop. But if we allow the body to release this trapped energy, we can then begin to heal and our bodies will be less triggered, which naturally means we'll have less negative thoughts about the triggers. And then it leads us to becoming more resilient and feeling safe, calm, and happy. And that's what we all want. So, so how we can release this stress from the body, that's what now you're all wondering, I'm sure. It all starts with the vagus nerve. So I'll give you a little bit of, I won't get too technical, but basically the vagus nerve is the 10th cranial nerve in the autonomic nervous system, and it connects our guts to our brains, to our face and our heart. And it's like a super highway that delivers messages of safety and threat and danger between the body and the brain. So then this affects our stress response and then affects our behavior and how connected and safe we feel to those around us. And all mammals and dogs have this. So we might just think it's just us, but our dogs have this as well. So that's important to help us understand not only our own behavior, but also our dog's behavior and why we get triggered or why they get triggered. And it seems like they literally can't hear us, right? That's when they're in fight or flight. And when they're in that state, we call it, or when we're in that state, it's like the red zone versus being in a calm, connected state, which we refer to as the green zone. And
right. So when our dogs, so we hear this, it's a common sort of phrase or expression in the dog world. It's like, like my dog won't listen. My dog is stubborn. My dog refuses to stop whatever they're doing. And what you're saying is that that our dogs literally can't even hear us when they're in that state, just like we can't hear someone else when we're in that state, when we're kind of caught up in the biology, right?
Exactly. Like you're literally your nervous system and their nervous system is in survival mode. So when you're in survival mode, you don't need to be social. You don't need to be polite to those around you and think clearly. You're thinking survival and safety. So you're going to do whatever needs to be done in that moment for your body to survive. And that may not be what we choose if we were in a calm thinking state, right? So same goes for our dogs. And we can't force ourselves or our dogs back to the green zone when it's in the red zone. So it's only once our nervous system feels safe that we can actually return to that green, calm state and go from survival to being more social, where we actually start to feel safer. We can then relax once we feel safe and to begin to make better decisions and act more consciously and mindfully. So our vagus nerve and our nervous system is actually what determines that it's safe to do that. It all happens subconsciously and automatically.
So it's not a matter of willpower or discipline or better training, right? I mean, it's that none of that really can override our nervous system. Is that correct? Does that sound about right?
Yeah, we cannot. When we try to override our nervous system, we face other issues. So we really need to deal with the root of the issue, which is helping our nervous system to cope better with stress and triggers.
Right. So I can't tell, like, if you're feeling panicked or anxious about something, I can't just tell you, like, oh, Marika, just calm down. It's okay. It's fine. It's nothing to worry about. Like, that's not going to have a positive effect on your nervous system directly. Like, there are other ways, and we're going to talk about that, but like, I can't intellectually talk you out of it. Correct?
No, and we can't talk our dogs out of it either. So I have this phrase I like to say, your dog doesn't need more training, their nervous system needs more training. And that goes the same for us too.
I love it. So you talk about this idea that, like, there's a reason why it seems like some people and some dogs handle life's stress better than others. So why is that?
Well, so I like logic. This really helps me get through life. So the vagus nerve is basically like a muscle. So it can be strong and resilient, but it can also become damaged and lose strength from encountering trauma and chronic stress, whether that's physically or mentally. So just like if we go to the gym and work out, we tone our muscles by doing the right balance of exercise, or we can overdo it and encounter injuries. So just same kind of thing. Our vagus nerve gets damaged, and when it's damaged, we can't handle stress as easily as someone else could. And it can be damaged early in life, as early as being in the womb, which is crazy, right? It can be damaged when you're in the womb and your mother's experiencing physical or mental stress. But it can also be damaged, in any part of our life, from childhood trauma or just a matter of chronic stress.
Yeah, I know there's studies in dogs of how when before the puppies are born, so while the mama dog is pregnant, if she's experiencing high levels of stress and cortisol in her system, it actually affects the ability of her, to be born puppies. When they are born and growing up, they have less ability to process stress. They don't have a lot of resiliency. So it's really interesting. Really interesting.
It is. It's so crazy because we just don't think about these things. We don't really realize how our current behavior and state of health and wellness today has all come from a part of our life that's so long ago that we're disconnected from, which I just find so fascinating.
Totally, totally. Okay, so this is so fascinating. So we've talked about the vagus nerve is like a muscle, and like a muscle, it can get damaged and it needs healing, and the damage can happen in all sorts of ways at various times in our life, even before birth. And it's certainly, for us humans, it could be related to even early childhood stress and trauma, that kind of thing. And so what happens? So when that vagus nerve is damaged, what does that mean? Like, what happens then?
So if our vagus nerve isn't functioning optimally, the messages it's delivering to our brain is going to be more often signs of threat rather than signs of safety. So we're encountering a bit of an unbalance. It becomes overactive and then falsely identifies danger in situations that aren't actually a cause for alarm. And we see this a lot in our dogs, right? You're like, why did my dog bark at that thing? That's nothing to worry about. Or, situations that to us might seem pretty obviously not dangerous, but our dog perceives them differently. And the same thing happens for us, whether we're aware of it or not. So we end up spending more time living in that red zone and being triggered more easily. And it becomes a self-perpetuating cycle. And the same thing happens obviously for our dogs, unless we consciously decide to do things differently. But the good news is that we can repair that damage. So everyone's probably going, yay, I'm not like for life.
Yay!
Yeah. So it starts with reducing stress in our lives as best as we can. it's also really helpful and beneficial to work on our mindset. And Kathy, you've got a lot of great podcasts on that. So there's a lot of resources for listeners to tap into there. And then the third thing is by doing vagus nerve toning exercises to help us become more resilient to stress and triggers, which I'll explain more about shortly.
Okay, so when we're having this trauma or stress that damages our vagus nerve, which we know can be healed, but how does that affect, like you talked about it getting trapped in our bodies? Can you connect those dots for us?
Yeah, so I mean, for a lot of us, we can identify where that came from. If we think back and we go, oh, yeah, I had that time where I was really sick, or, oh, yeah, when someone in my family passed away, that was really traumatic for me. And so many of us, we can trace back, like we've had periods of stress in our life. But then there's another category of people that may not be able to, may just go, well, I haven't really experienced that much stress in my previous life, or I didn't have a stressful childhood or any trauma. Like, how could I be this badly affected? And now that comes down to this, trauma that we experienced doesn't actually have to be big traumas. It doesn't have to be chronic stress. So something many people don't know is that past stress and trauma actually becomes trapped in our bodies, and this affects our current ability to handle day-to-day stress. So for many of us, we don't really remember or consider our childhoods to have been particularly traumatic because we're thinking big trauma like abuse or losing a parent or something big like that. But trauma can actually come from simply not feeling like you belong, or not feeling connected to your parents as a child, or from something like not being picked up when you're crying out in distress and you're not getting your needs met for reassurance in those moments. And the same thing happens for our dogs when they're like barking at a trigger, for example. They too just need reassurance that everything's okay in that moment and not to be ignored or simply told to be quiet. So these little traumas that happen before an age that we even have any memories from can have hugely profound effects on our adult nervous system, because while we may not consciously remember, our bodies do, and this affects us subconsciously.
Interesting, fascinating. And so fortunately, you're going to talk to us about what we can do about it. And I think the piece that that complicates it is that we humans, especially maybe we dog moms, because we take our role seriously, right? We pile guilt on top of all of that. So we have stress, maybe we had some trauma, something small or big, and then we feel guilty when that unhealed, we haven't released that energy that's held in our body. And then we feel guilty about it on top of all that. Oh my gosh, right?
Yeah, and this has certainly been a big thing for me. I've held a lot of guilt about how I've reacted in situations and my behavior towards my dogs. So learning about this has been really cathartic and really helpful for me to move forward. And hopefully will be for a lot of the people listening too, because if we don't understand why we're so triggered, so easily by our dogs or husbands or people at work, then we want to blame ourselves. We want to shame ourselves and make it all about make us feel like there's nothing we can do and we're trapped. But it's really not the case, because the reason we get triggered is it's an automated stress response in our bodies. It's not something we have control over in the moment if we're not doing the things I'm going to talk to you about. So just understanding this is something that can start to help you let go and help us start to heal and forgive ourselves, which is really important.
Totally, yeah. And then, like we talk about, our dog's behavior is their way of communicating with us. Well, interestingly, with humans, one of the ways that our unreleased or unhealed stress, it can show up as anxiety, which of course then it just kind of snowballs, right? So tell us about anxiety being an expression of this stored trauma.
Totally. So this was so interesting when I learned this, because I don't generally consider myself to experience a lot of anxiety, whereas I recognize it in people around me. And I'm like, oh, geez, I'm glad I don't experience a lot of anxiety. But what I've come to realize is I actually do experience anxiety. It's just not in the form that I associate it with. So many people don't know that trauma can actually show up as a feeling of anxiety. And whether it's generalized anxiety, where it feels like there's no specific trigger, or situational anxiety, where something actually happens to trigger that feeling. And I'll give you a few examples. So for some people, it might be this constant thought looping and worrying, or you just wake up feeling awful and you don't know why. And you feel like something bad's going to happen, or there's something wrong with you, right? You're just feeling this impending doom. So this is generalized anxiety, right? Where there's no specific thing that you can put your finger on. Whereas situational anxiety is the more obvious one, where you actually get triggered by something. You might feel rage and anger and snap at someone, and then you don't know why. And of course, you blame yourself. So all in all, anxiety is just a feeling of unsafety in the body, and it manifests in so many different ways, So for some people, it's the thought looping, and other people, it's actually just this feeling in their body that suddenly they have to explode about something. And it does start in the body, and then the thoughts happen afterwards to try and make sense of the feeling that we're experiencing in our bodies.
Yeah, that's good. I know. I mean, I could relate to, those examples for sure. And so, like all of our emotions, so anxiety is simply our body and our mind, trying to get our attention and wake us up to some new possibility, right?
Exactly. Like, it's trying to help us. It's trying to keep us safe and trying to help us at the same time. And if we ignore that, then we just get stuck there, and it just gets worse, and life kind of follows along in that journey, because it's all happening subconsciously unless we decide to do something.
Right. So tell us some of the other stuff that we could do.
Well, I came across this guy, Dr. Russell Kennedy, who's a neuroscientist, and he's been really helpful and insightful in me learning these new layers about anxiety and relating it to how I struggle, because I often feel dysregulated and angry and out of control, and I couldn't make sense of it, right? But now that I understand that, this is just anxiety, and it's from my past trauma being, unresolved, it really, like, making sense of it all makes me go, oh, okay, and there's something I can do about it. Great. And it doesn't feel impossible. Wow, that brings such relief.
Yeah.
So basically, Dr. Russell Kennedy says that anxiety is like an alarm in your body, right? It's trying to get your attention. And that it's your younger self crying out, desperate to be seen, heard, and loved, which makes so much sense, because when we didn't have our needs met at an earlier time in life, that's when that trapped energy got stored in the body, because we couldn't make sense of it. We couldn't do anything about it. We were too young to know what to do. Mm-hmm. So our nervous system interprets that as we're not safe. And if our parental figures or the people around us don't co-regulate with us or help us resolve that feeling, then it just gets trapped in the body. So I'd love to help our listeners learn more about how to heal this alarm and work through their anxiety.
Thought I would just throw in this idea that you're speaking from your personal experiences as a woman, as a dog mom, and that a lot of this journey that you've been on has helped. Like, it started with you wanting to help your dogs and deal with their anxieties and their reactivity, and that led you to explore and learn and and connect with experts and do your own healing. So I just wanted to put it out there that like we're not doing therapy here. We're just sharing experiences as a dog mom and how these, these strategies and these principles could really help us, right? So I just thought I wanted to put that out there.
Yeah, totally. Because the reason I came across this information because it's something I was struggling with myself for so long. And I thought it was my dogs that needed to change, right? I'm like, oh, once my dogs stop acting out, I'll feel better. But through this process, I learned actually I need to work out how to feel better first. And then I can help my dogs feel better.
Yeah, so, I love it. So some of the things that helped you. So one of the things was from Dr. Kennedy about one of his philosophies and some of the steps. So tell us what are some of the things that helped you?
Yeah. So, well, it was more just a realization and understanding that it starts with, because we can't always start with the action steps. We kind of need to wrap our head around things first and forgive ourselves, and all that, I think, has to come first before you can actually start doing the action steps. So the why behind it, or the why I act like this, is really, I think, the first beneficial thing to understand to help you to heal. So a really good quote that resonates with me by Dr. Russell is, you need to feel it to heal it. So if we're not letting our bodies feel, if we're just suppressing things and distracting ourselves when we have that feeling in our body, then we can't heal. We're essentially running away from it because that feels safer for our bodies than to actually feel pain. And that makes sense, right? We don't want to feel pain. No, and that's how, that's something for me that was reoccurring, where I was like, oh, don't like that feeling. I'm just going to go clean the kitchen, or, oh, I know I have some shopping to do. Let's go to the shops. Or, you just come up with a reason to avoid it. And that's the normal thing to do until we become aware that it's actually not helping us in the long run. And there's a better way to deal with it. So I feel like once I knew more information about how trauma and stress and anxiety affect our body and how we didn't really have much control over it, it relieves that guilt for me and the blame and the shame. And it started to allow me to begin to heal my relationship with myself. And that is really the most important relationship we have, because if we can't accept ourselves or forgive ourselves, then we really can't help those around us. We really have to put our own oxygen mask on first to be able to assist those around us. And that's what this comes down to, is acceptance of it's okay where we are, and I now know better, so I can do better.
All right. Well, that was part one. And I hope that you are intrigued and it has you starting to dig into a deeper personal understanding of what might be happening for you under the surface. So let that settle. Come back next week for part two, where Marika is going to lead us through some specific exercises, and we have a few more things to talk about. So it's going to be really good. I will see you next week. Bye-bye for now. Be brilliant. Thanks so much for listening. And hey, if you would like to work with me so that I can help you discover the missing pieces you need so that you and your dog can finally be happy and enjoy life together, then head on over to dancingheartsdogacademy.com and request your invitation to join us in the Brilliant Partners Academy when the doors open for the next enrollment. See you next time, and remember, a brilliant partnership with your dog makes your whole life brilliant.